So today we're at Cadburys World. If you like this video, please subscribe. See more content like this, where we go around various Merlin attractions. Cadburys World has just become available on the Merlin annual pass. I always take photos. You've got more photos. I take I'm going to try and get out of your way.
It's done the ones and two Ps, but not the 50 Ps in there.
Just as I suspected. My fellow countrymen absolutely adore me. Just look around. Everyone is waiting.
Chocolate and cocoa arrived in England under Cromwell, but didn't gain popularity until the restoration of King Charles II, when it became popular both at court and with the wealthy. Samuel Pepys, the famous diarist, wrote of it the day after the coronation of Charles II.
They also used to give out samples of like hot chocolate.
My head is sad taking last night's drinking, which I am sorry for. So rose and went out to Winston Green to drink our morning draught, which I gave chocolate to settle my stomach.
So my cousin, seeing examples of tea, coffee, and cocoa nibs.
After killing the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma, defeating the Aztec people, I returned to Spain in 1526. I loaded my galleons with cocoa beans and chocolate drink-making equipment, as I was convinced that this drink would delight my contemporaries in Spain. However, days, as English and Dutch pirates were constantly attacking and capturing treasure ships. Look, I found the treasure. What's this? This is just bags of sheets drop-ins. Get rid of it. What sort of treasure ship is this? Senorita, un poquito chocolate. Just as I suspected. My fellow countrymen absolutely adore the taste of chocolate. Just look around. Everyone is drinking it.
Is this the same recipe originally enjoyed by the Aztecs?
We have changed the recipe by replacing the chili pepper and by adding other spices. Cinnamon, nutmeg, and by adding sugar. We kept chocolate a closely guarded secret for over 100 years, until the daughter of King Philip II of Spain married King Louis XIII of France and took the secret with her to the French court.
Owns and runs the drink business next door. Our family are staunch traders, and we originally came from the West Country. Father moved the family to Birmingham from our home in Exeter in 1794 and set up his business as a linen draper and silver. Birmingham was a fine place to live, with plenty of business opportunities. We soon made many friends, and my father became a prominent member of the local Quaker community. Because of our religious beliefs, Quakers were considered to be nonconformists. This prevented us from studying at university, and as a result, we were unable to enter the professions, such as medicine and law. Also, because Quakers are pacifists, we couldn't join the army or navy. And so trade and commerce were the only areas where Quakers could focus their ambitions and prosper. I was apprenticed as a tea merchant in Leeds, and then worked in a bonded tea house in London. When I returned to Birmingham in 1824, I borrowed some money from my father to go into business as a tea dealer and coffee roaster. I took over this shop and installed this large plate glass window so that my customers could see the samples of tea, coffee, and cocoa nibs that I prepared myself. My colourful window displays soon attracted new customers from far and wide. I even employed a fully costumed Chinese man to help serve the shop. Oh yes, he caused a lot of interest. And with him minding the shop, I started to experiment, manufacturing my own cocoa and chocolate in the cellar behind the shop. You see, I noticed that fashionable people were drinking cocoa and chocolate. I decided to offer them to my customers as well. This was good for my business, because tea, coffee, cocoa, and chocolate were considered as acceptable alternatives to alcohol, of which we, as Quakers, strongly disapproved. Let me tell you some more about how my business grew and prospered from these very humble beginnings. In my spare time, I experimented with preparations of cocoa beans and chocolate, which I could sell in the shop. Soon I had to rent a warehouse in nearby Crooked Lane, where I could manufacture these products on a larger scale. At first, it was very difficult, because I had to pay high taxes on the cocoa beans. And then, on top of all that, I had to move out of Crooked Lane and into another factory, here in Bridge Street. That's when my brother Benjamin joined me, and together we formed Cadbury brothers. With more space, we could now prepare a cocoa powder and an eating chocolate that could be packed and sold. Soon after, my eldest son, Richard, joined the company. Having Richard with us made all the difference. He saw to it that the quality of our cocoa improved, introduced new products, and even opened a shop in London. Our efforts were rewarded when we received our first royal warrant from Queen Victoria. That was when my younger son, George, joined us.
George introduced many benefits for the workforce, such as half-day holidays, a sick club, and many improvements in the factory.
And Richard, your new designs for our packaging were a huge success.
Well, we had to try something different, just to get ourselves recognized, Father, as we were still a small company. Our aim was to manufacture only the highest quality cocoa and chocolate.
I know, and I could tell you some stories of less scrupulous producers who added brick dust to their cocoa.
Ours was still gritty, but we only added sugar to take away the bitter taste and starch to absorb the fat. However, George had heard of a new kind of cocoa press. He went to Holland in 1866, saw the press being used and brought one back.
The Van Houten press.
Oh yes, Father. You see, because we could extract more of the cocoa butter, there was no need for more additives. Not only was our cocoa essence more palatable, but also output increased.
The Bridge Street factory was now too small to cope, and we had to expand somewhere else.
For some time, George and I had shared the same vision to build our new factory in a garden setting, away from the smoke and grime of the city. We called our new factory Bourneville. We opened our new factory in 1879 and were faced with many more challenges as the size of our workforce increased. As the company prospered, we introduced bonuses, such as payment for output and punctuality, a 5.5-day week, pension schemes, works committees, training, and many other benefits.
I sent my son George to Switzerland to find out how chocolate was made, using fresh milk.
Soon after, Cadbury were able to manufacture chocolate with a much higher milk content that rivaled even the best Swiss products.
That was when we launched our most important new brand. We called it Cadbury's Dairy Milk. It became so popular with its distinctive taste that sales exceeded all our best expectations. And within a short while, it had become our best-selling chocolate. In 1919, we merged with Fry, and the company went from strength to strength.
And so we have seen that big things have their roots in the smallest beginnings.
Our story starts over there, where you can see a farmer and his team planting our young cocoa trees. Hello there! Once each pod has been plucked, it is cut open, so that all of the beans and sticky pulp can be scooped out to be fermented in a heap and then dried in the hot sun until they've turned a rich brown colour. Once the beans are dried, they are tested for their quality before being loaded onto a cargo ship to be transported to England. They are then taken to our factory in Chirk for processing. Now, first the beans must be sorted and physically cleaned to remove any stones, dust and string that have come across with the beans from Africa. This is done using a stream of air and by passing the beans over vibrating sieves. The raw cocoa beans are now pasteurized using very hot steam. Clean cocoa beans are now taken to be roasted in revolving tubular gas-fired ovens. The beans are then cooled and are ready to have their shells removed through a process called winnowing. This is done by passing the group of beans over a series of vibrating trays and hitting them with breaker arms. The shell is then blown away and the remaining pieces of bean are called nibs. The nibs are now ground up in large mills. This process generates heat, which helps to transform the nibs into a thick, chocolate-coloured liquid called cocoa liquor, or mass. Some cocoa liquor is taken to our factory at Marlborough for further processing. The rest of the liquor is pressed to extract the cocoa butter. The refined cocoa butter is now taken to Bourneville, where we will catch up with it later. Meanwhile, the cocoa liquor that has been taken to Marlbrook is pumped into storage tanks, ready to be turned into chocolate crumb. Over 150 tons of sugar and 500,000 litres of fresh full cream milk are delivered to Marlbrook every day to be used in this process. But first, the milk must be pasteurised and then evaporated to remove most of the water before sugar can be added to produce a sweetened condensed milk. The liquid milk and sugar solution is now heated again before the cocoa liquor from Chirk is added and thoroughly mixed to create a thick paste. The paste is then squeezed between steam-heated rollers under a huge vacuum, causing the paste to turn into a powder. The resulting crumb is scraped from the rollers, dried in a flow of hot air, and blown into storage silos. The crumb is now taken to Bourneville in tankers, where it is ground and mixed into a paste with this, the cocoa butter, which came from Chirk earlier. The paste is then refined into a flake before being conched or mixed to form a liquid chocolate. This liquid chocolate is used to make all our famous milk chocolate products.
Maybe everyone enjoyed that. You can have them.
Isabella?
Process of Easter eggs.
How about the chance to defend yourselves, Captain?
Does that make you want to jump on this?
Yeah.
Cadburys fingers. And the green zone. See somebody else doing that, that's what I know.
Welcome to Cadbury. If you look carefully at the pages ahead of you, they will help you enjoy the Cadbury magic.
Time for your photo. Look at the birdhouse over there, and don't forget to smile and wave. Bye, everybody. See you next time at Cadabra. Bye.
Yep. Tasting chocolate.
Oh, yes. Oh.
Yep.
Oh.
Oh, look at it.
No, unfortunately,
Oh, it's chocolate.
degrees. This temperature, it's a bit too hot to go into our molds. We try and mold our chocolate from this temperature. We're going to end up with chocolate that's all crumbly, bendy. It's not going to look quite right. We'll have those white spots, white streaky bits on it. It's definitely not what we want in our chocolate. Obviously, we want our chocolate to be nice and shiny, have a nice achieve that, our chocolate needs to go through a process known as tempering. We might have had to go at some hand tempering upstairs, is that correct? Hopefully? Awesome. So you should know what happens next. We're just starting off by spreading out our chocolate nice and evenly on the table. This is helping cool down our chocolate, but more importantly, it's helping to reform the cocoa butter crystals in our chocolate to ensure we get that nice shine, snap, and silky smooth texture on our chocolate. So once we spread it out, we're going to scrape it all back together into a nice pile. When we were spreading it out, the chocolate was cooling down unevenly, so we need to mix it all back together to make sure that our chocolate has a nice consistent temperature. I'm going to spread my chocolate out one more time. It's starting to get a little bit thicker, a little bit stickier. It's exactly what we want at this stage. Back together one more time. So when they would have been making chocolate this way over 100 years ago, this job would have been mainly done by the ladies of Cadburys. They would have worked on tables much larger than this and with a lot more chocolate. They would have worked 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, just spreading out the chocolate, scraping it back up, spreading it out, scraping it back up. So once they'd done this process a couple of times and they felt their chocolate was tempered, they needed a way to check it, test the temperature, make sure it was properly tempered. Fortunately, they didn't have any fancy thermometers like we do today. So instead what they used to test their chocolate was this, their little finger. So they take that, dab it around in their puddle of chocolate, checking for any hot spots. If it was a nice consistent temperature, they then take the inside of their wrist, their skin's nice and sensitive, give it a little dab, a little taste of course. And if the chocolate was cool to the touch, then they knew it was ready to go into a mould. We've got plastic molds here today. This one's very similar to the ones we use in the 2 production rooms behind you. But back in the day, they would have used big heavy metal molds like this. Now the problem with these molds, once they do start to get to even a size like this, and you think about some of the molds that we use, like these Mr. and Mrs. molds here, they do start to get quite heavy. So you can imagine if you're working all day, working around, your arms are going to get quite tired. But also, you'll see in a bit that we need to give our molds a bit of a tap to get rid of all the air bubbles. So there's a difference between listening to this all day and listening to this. Not very nice if you have to listen to that all day, every day. Drive you a bit bananas. So there's a few reasons we don't use those anymore. We use our plastic ones. So we've got our mold, we've got our tempered chocolate. I'm going to scoop some of it up, lay it on the mold and just start working it over. Just trying to work that chocolate into all the corners. Try and get it in there nice and evenly. Just going to give my mold a quick clean, get rid of all that excess chocolate. Make sure none of it's going to waste. All of it can be used later at some stage. So at this stage, we've got our chocolate in our mould here. Only problem is there's going to be lots of air bubbles throughout our chocolate, little pockets of air in our mould as well. We don't want that. We of course want nice solid pieces of chocolate. So to get rid of those air bubbles, we're going to give our mould a bit of a tap on the bench and a jiggle. You might be able to see some air bubbles have already started to come to the top there. That's a good sign. We're just going to keep working our chocolate. Just working the chocolate into all the corners of the mould. Getting all those pockets of air out, getting out all those air bubbles. That should be about right now. Now so if I've tempered my chocolate right, I should be able to turn it upside down. Have that chocolate hang in the mould there, not drop out, at least not without a little bit of help. So at this stage we can put our mould away into the fridge and have it set into some solid chocolate squares. However, depending on what the ladies in Cadbury would have been making, they would have done this next step that I'll show you. It's a process known as shelling. So we turn our mould upside down, we just give it a bit of a tap and a shake. And there we have our lovely chocolate bang. So that's just the chocolate from the middle of the mould, not quite climbing to the sides yet, dropping out and leaving behind some lovely chocolate shells see those forming quite nicely there in our mould. Give it a bit of a clean, and I'll put these shells to the side to set for a few minutes. Luckily I do have some shells here that I made a little bit earlier. You can see how those have set quite nicely in our mould. At this stage, the ladies at Cadbury can pipe in all sorts of delicious fillings. You think your strawberry cream, caramel, orange cream, mint cream. Nowadays we'd be putting in your Oreos and other kinds of sweeties. So we've got our chocolate shells, got our delicious fillings in there. We want to make sure those fillings now aren't going to go running away. So I'm just going to scoop up some of our leftover chocolate, lay that on top and just spread that over. Just sealing away those fillings, making sure they're not going to run away in us. There we go. Just going to give my mold another quick clean. Again, being conscious not to waste too much chocolate. We've been very conscious of that back in the day, as chocolate was very expensive. We made sure to use as much of it as possible, trying to get as much of it off the mold. So you can see there, those shells are now nice and sealed up, and our mold's ready to head into the fridge to set for later. Now I do have some chocolate here that should be set. Find the right one. Here we go. So these have been in the fridge for about half an hour at this point. You can see they're a little bit darker in colour than what I've been with the chocolate that I've been working with on the table. It's a good sign that our chocolate's set. However, a better indicator, you might be able to see on the back, the chocolate looks a little bit frosty. That's telling us that the chocolate started to pull away from the mould and should be ready to come out. So we're just going to give our mould a little bit of a twist to help it along, and then these should just tap out for us. There we go. So we have our lovely hand-tempered, hand-moulded, handmade chocolate, just like we would have done here at Cadbury over 100 years ago. Thank you so much, folks. I hope you enjoyed the demonstration. If you have any questions, please don't be afraid to ask, and hope you have a wonderful rest.
Vamos escrever aí.
It's over. Don't you love these Cadburys?
Now we're on the outside of Cadbury's World where the kiddies play area is and the 4Ds in there. You do get your cash checks again at this area, so people don't just go to a 4D cinema when they haven't got tickets.